At 32, my life was mundane, defined by a dreary office job at a large company where I was trapped in a cubicle, surrounded by endless spreadsheets and business jargon. Lunchtimes were solitary events, spent nibbling on a lackluster salad while staring at my computer screen. My dating history was as underwhelming as a blank canvas. I simply didn't stand out. Clad in various shades of beige, from my clothes to my hair, my personality seemed equally muted. One day, my cubicle neighbor, Margot, swiveled her chair towards me with a mischievous look. Margot was everything I was not. Vibrant, with bright red lipstick and a boisterous laugh, always surrounded by office gossip. "Genesis," she began in a hushed tone. "Guess what? There's a guy who's interested in you." My head snapped up in shock. Margot, grinning, informed me that this admirer often saw me at our favorite little French cafe. I was incredulous. Someone had noticed me there, amidst my weekly escape from the monotony, where I indulged in overpriced coffee and daydreamed of romantic comedies. "Who? How does he even know I exist?" I asked, puzzled. Margot shrugged, mentioning he was a bit shy but had been watching me. The following Friday, with Margot's information, I was on edge with anticipation. As I was about to lose hope, a tall man with messy black hair and a confident demeanor entered. Our eyes met, and he walked directly towards me, his smirk turning into a genuine smile as he approached. "Hey," I managed to say, my voice faltering like that of a nervous teenager on a first date. "Hey there," he replied warmly. "You're the girl from the corner table, right? I see you here all the time." We exchanged a few words, and he soon asked if I'd like to join him for coffee elsewhere. Excited and slightly nervous, I agreed. That Saturday, he took me to a vibrant record store downtown, a treasure trove of music from all genres. Elias, as I learned his name, expertly sifted through the records, sharing his passion for music. He handed me a Miles Davis album. "Absolute masterpiece," he declared. I listened, intrigued, as he discussed the music. Margot watched us with a knowing smile when we returned to the office, her earlier prediction confirmed. Thanks to her, my life began to shed its beige tones, filling instead with the colors and sounds of new experiences and a budding romance. I felt a twinge of insecurity as Elias handed me a Miles Davis record. I wasn't much of a jazz enthusiast. His laughter was warm and comforting as he reassured me, "No worries. Everyone's got to start somewhere. Maybe I can introduce you to the good stuff." As the hours slipped by amidst music trivia and shared chuckles, I discovered that Elias, beneath his poised exterior, was quite the character. He cracked awful jokes and recited lines from cheesy 80s films with an earnestness that had me laughing until tears came. Strolling back to my car, the air filled with an easy silence. It was clear this wasn't just any coffee outing. There was a genuine spark, a connection that felt deeper than common interests or clever banter. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, Elias surprised me with a fancy dinner date that took an unexpected turn. As he knelt with a simple yet stunning diamond necklace, I found myself tearfully accepting his proposal. "Marry me, Genesis," he said, emotion heavy in his voice, "and let's paint our lives with every color imaginable." Weeks later, Elias suggested I meet his parents. The thought sent a wave of nerves through me, but his comforting grip on my hand reassured me. "Don't worry, they'll love you," he whispered. His parents, Bailey and Lincoln, welcomed me with open arms into their quaint suburban home. Bailey's warm hug and Lincoln's firm handshake made me feel immediately part of the family. The evening was filled with engaging conversations and laughter, ending with me feeling less like an outsider and more like I truly belonged. Afterward, as Elias and I headed to my car, he playfully asked, "So, when do you think we should make this official?" My laughter was carefree. "How about next summer?" His grin was wide. "Sounds perfect, Mrs. Elias Thompson. That has a nice necklace to it, doesn't it?" Our wedding was a small, intimate gathering. My father, a successful businessman, couldn't hide his pride as he walked me down the aisle. The simple yet elegant dress I wore seemed just right, reflecting the newfound confidence and joy in my eyes. That evening, I posted a photo in my wedding dress with a caption that read, "Happily ever after begins." Married life was delightful. Sweet moments and romantic getaways planned by Elias and cozy evenings spent watching Netflix. Life was bliss until Elias suggested a significant change, moving in with his parents. This new chapter promised to be as challenging as it was exciting, yet with Elias by my side, I felt ready for whatever came our way. Elias looked worried as he spoke about his parents getting older. "They could use our help around the house," he said, his face reflecting genuine concern. Understanding his close bond with his parents and having grown fond of Bailey and Lincoln myself, I agreed without hesitation. They greeted us with warm smiles and freshly baked cookies, making the house feel instantly brighter with our presence. A few weeks into our stay, Sunday dinner conversation took a sharp turn. We discussed the house's deteriorating condition, a roof that looked like a patchwork quilt, peeling paint, and dubious electrical wiring. "Don't worry, Dad," Elias reassured as he helped himself to more dinner. "We'll get it all sorted." I gave him a worried look. Our savings weren't exactly robust, but the thought of his parents living in such a state was unsettling. Bailey, overcome with emotion, started to cry. "Oh, Elias, you shouldn't have to worry about this," she sobbed. "This old house has seen better days, but we don't want to burden you too." The guilt was palpable. They were such kind-hearted people. The thought of them in these conditions was heartbreaking. Later that night, tucked in bed, I broached the topic of the house repairs. "Maybe we could use some of our savings for the repairs?" I suggested tentatively. Elias's face lit up. "Bingo. Those leaky pipes aren't going to fix themselves." We agreed to share the renovation costs, feeling like responsible adults stepping up to the challenge. The following weeks were a whirlwind of contractors, paint samples, and countless trips to the home improvement store. Bailey and Lincoln couldn't thank us enough, their gratitude evident as the house transformed from drab to delightful. 7 months later, the house was unrecognizable. Shiny new appliances in the kitchen, a leak-proof roof, and a completely refreshed interior. They even threw a big celebration party with a lavish spread. However, amidst the festivities, Bailey burst into tears. I rushed to her side, anxiety twisting in my gut. "What's wrong, Bailey?" I asked, dabbing at her running mascara. "Oh, honey," she sniffled, gripping my hand. "We're so happy with the house." But her words trailed off as she glanced towards Lincoln and Elias, who mumbled an excuse and stepped outside. "But what, Bailey?" I urged gently. Taking a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears again. "We might lose the house, honey. They're going to take it away." My heart sank. Lose the house? After all this work? Why? What happened? Bailey glanced towards the doorway where the men had disappeared. "We took a big loan, a huge one, to fix up the place, and now it's due," she whispered, her voice heavy with worry. My stomach dropped. "How much?" $350,000, honey, she sighed, "and we have to pay it back in the next 3 months. The news hit like a cold wave. They had mentioned taking out a loan. Confusion mixed with a rising tide of anger and worry as I struggled to process the magnitude of the situation. The joy of the evening dimmed, overshadowed by the looming financial crisis. The revelation hit like a tidal wave. Bailey and Lincoln had accumulated a massive amount of debt, keeping it all under wraps, and now it seemed they were looking to me for a bailout. Despite my frustration, seeing Bailey's tear-stained face softened my resolve. "I'm so sorry, Bailey," I said, my voice constricted with emotion. "But I don't have that kind of money. There's nothing I can do." Just then, Elias and Lincoln re-entered the room, both wearing sheepish expressions. "There might be something you can do, Genesis," Elias began hesitantly, his eyes avoiding mine. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "Like what?" I asked cautiously. Elias swallowed, his voice tinged with desperation. "Well, your dad's pretty successful, right? Maybe you could ask him about a loan." The suggestion felt like a manipulation, but Bailey's tearful gaze was hard to ignore. With a heavy heart, I agreed to speak to my father, though I made no promises. The next day, I called my dad, apprehensive about the conversation. He listened silently as I explained the situation, his pause stretching into an agonizing silence. Finally, he spoke, his tone grave. "All right, Genesis, I'll lend you the money, but on one condition. It must be a formal loan with a signed receipt. That way, if necessary, I can reclaim the funds." Relaying this to Elias, I saw his reluctance at the idea of a receipt, but necessity won out, and he agreed. With my father's assistance, the debt was cleared, and Bailey and Lincoln were effusive in their gratitude, treating me like a hero. Despite the relief of resolving the crisis, a simmering resentment lingered within me. This bitterness only deepened with the sudden, devastating loss of my father to a heart attack. The days that followed were a haze of grief, arranging the funeral amid a stream of condolences that felt as hollow as the silence his absence left in our home. One afternoon, emotionally drained from funeral preparations, I arrived at my in-laws' house earlier than expected. The front door creaked as I entered, a noise catching my attention. Muted voices came from the living room: Bailey, Lincoln, and Elias. Curiosity piqued, but with a sense of guilt about eavesdropping, I hesitated near the doorway. "Can you believe it?" Lincoln's voice carried a chilling note of satisfaction. $350,000, and we're practically debt-free thanks to her old man. Bailey's laugh was devoid of any warmth. "Stupid girl, that Genesis. She never suspected a thing." My heart raced with a mix of shock and fury. Their words, cold and calculating, were a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. But the conversation took an even darker turn. "Can we talk about something else?" Elias's voice was tinged with annoyance. "Living with her is killing me. She's disgusting." Bailey interjected, amusement lacing her tone. "Something like that," Elias agreed with a heavy sigh. "Look, I've told you I've had someone else for a while now. Someone much younger, way hotter than Genesis." The room spun as their words echoed in my head. Not only had they lied and manipulated me about the financial situation, but Elias was also unfaithful. The deception was comprehensive, extending beyond money to personal betrayal. "Patience, Elias." Lincoln's voice cut through, firm despite the situation. "Those damn receipts." His voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. They were annoyed by the strings attached to the financial help. Reeling from the revelations, I stood frozen, a storm of emotions brewing inside. The people I had trusted most had used me, and the facade of their affection had shattered irreparably. The revelation that Elias and his parents had been plotting to remove the legal proofs of the loan, specifically the receipts my father insisted on, chilled me to the bone. Elias's next words, muttered with venomous intent, were even more alarming. "I can steal them," he snarled. "Sneak into her dad's house. Get rid of them. Problem solved." Despite the turmoil inside me, I knew I couldn't let on that I had overheard. Driven by a mixture of white-hot anger and a cold resolve, I decided to act. With a deep breath, I slammed the front door shut, the sound echoing through the house as a clear signal of my return. The living room door burst open, and Bailey's face appeared, painted with a feigned concern. "Oh, honey, you're back early. How did the funeral arrangements go?" Grief, both real and useful as a disguise for my inner storm, welled up in my eyes. "Going well," I choked out, my voice thick with genuine sorrow mixed with growing fury. Elias muttered something about coming over to help clear out my dad's house, while his parents shared a sly glance, a flicker of triumph in their eyes. Little did they know the game had indeed changed. The funeral for my dad was a blur of sorrow and superficial exchanges. Back at Bailey and Lincoln's house afterward, the facade of sympathy quickly fell away, replaced by a chilling indifference. It started with Elias. One moment, he was awkwardly by my side. The next, he was leaning in close, his voice low and harsh. "Get out," he spat. "Get out of this house, and don't come back." My heart pounded, but I met his gaze steadily. "What do you mean?" I managed to say. "Don't play dumb, Genesis. We're done. You've served your purpose," he sneered, revealing the depth of their deceit and his betrayal. "You and your fancy daddy with his deep pockets. We don't need you anymore. Besides, I have someone else now. Younger, Hotter, everything you're not. His words were a visceral blow, but before I could respond, Bailey interjected, her tone dripping with venom. Honestly, Genesis, we only tolerated you because we needed your money to fix this damn house. You were so desperate to play housewife that you fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. And the house? I asked, my voice tight, thinking of all I had done and sacrificed. Our house, dear. You just happened to pay for it, Bailey laughed cruelly. And speaking of paying, Elias sneered, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Consider these receipts a parting gift. With a smug look, he ripped them to shreds, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. But instead of crumbling under their cruelty, a calm washed over me. A slow smile spread across my face, contrasting starkly with their shocked expressions. What's so funny? Lincoln growled, his voice cracking. Funny, I echoed, my voice laced with amusement and a dangerous edge. You think those were the real receipts? Their smugness flickered into doubt. Leaning in, I lowered my voice to a whisper, chilling in its clarity. Those were just copies. The originals are safely tucked away with my lawyer. The color drained from Elias's face, Bailey's jaw dropped, and Lincoln looked as though he might faint. Finally, the tables had turned. I want my money back, I stated firmly, ready to reclaim not just the funds but also my dignity and control over my life. My voice was firm and unwavering as I confronted them. I want every penny of the $350,000 you swindled from me, and I want it by tomorrow, or I'll see you in court. Their pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. I was done giving them chances. Leaving them speechless and scrambling for a solution, I turned on my heel and exited the front door, which slammed shut with a satisfying bang. The next morning, I returned to the house I had once considered a home. Lincoln and his wife sat on the couch, their faces etched with practiced despair. Even Elias, the ultimate weasel, managed a hangdog expression. Genesis, Lincoln started, his voice dripping with false sincerity. We've been talking, and I cut him off with a raised hand. Save it, Lincoln. I know your game. Their feigned sadness faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Bailey dabbed at non-existent tears with a lace handkerchief. Genesis, honey, she cried. We were wrong. We truly are sorry. Can't we just forget all this and start over? I scoffed. Forget? Forget the way you called me disgusting? Forget the lies, the manipulation? And you, Elias. I turned to my ex-husband, my voice laced with ice. Don't even think about pleading your case. A cheater is a cheater, and I have no interest in sharing my life with a lying scoundrel. Silence descended upon the room, thick and suffocating. Their carefully constructed facade crumbled, replaced by raw desperation. Then, an idea struck me, a solution that balanced justice with a touch of sweet satisfaction. Look, I said, leaning forward, you're broke. I have the money you stole. So here's the deal. Their eyes widened in a mixture of hope and suspicion. I outlined my plan, my voice firm and unwavering. In exchange for the stolen money, you will sign over the ownership of the house to me. A tense silence followed, broken only by Lincoln's ragged breathing. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he nodded. All right, Genesis, we agree. A triumphant smile spread across my face. Within the hour, my lawyer, a shark in a power suit, arrived. He drafted a watertight contract transferring the ownership of the house from Lincoln and Bailey to me. As they signed the final documents, their faces were a study of misery. The weight of their betrayal hung heavy in the air. I watched with satisfaction as they loaded their belongings into a beat-up pickup truck, their defeated figures shrinking into the distance. The house, once a symbol of their deceit, now stood before me as a symbol of my victory. A year had passed like a runaway train. The divorce was final, a clean break that left Elias with nothing but the clothes on his back, and good riddance. Justice, though slow, had arrived. News traveled fast in our small town, and gossip found its way to me courtesy of Margot and the girls during our usual Friday night wind-down. Elias's young and hot mistress was just a bored coworker looking for a harmless flirtation. When things got serious, she bolted faster than a scolded cat. As for his parents, they were now huddled in a dingy one-bedroom apartment, a far cry from the spacious house they'd tried to swindle from me. The initial sting of betrayal had dulled to a simmering ember, replaced by a fierce determination. My dad's unfinished business, his community garden project, became my focus. I poured my energy into nurturing his dream, turning grief and betrayal into a new beginning and a legacy of growth. Finding a new sense of purpose, I felt a deep connection to my father that seemed to bridge the gap his absence had created. One sunny afternoon, as I supervised a group of eager volunteers in the community garden, a familiar, grating voice reached my ears. It was Alice, the head of the Homeowners Association, who had always been overly critical of my dad's project. "Genesis," she drawled, her voice oozing condescension. "Such a noble cause you've taken up. But have you considered the unsightly aspects of a community garden?" I narrowed my eyes, my response firm and unwavering. "Unsightly? Alice? These are fresh vegetables, not a garbage dump. And unlike some, we're contributing to the community." Her facade of superiority quickly fell away, replaced by a visible flash of anger. But before she could snap back, a group of children burst into the scene. Their faces were alight with joy, and their arms were laden with freshly picked tomatoes. As Alice huffed and retreated in defeat, I took a moment to look around. The garden was alive with vibrant rows of vegetables, the joyful laughter of children, and the genuine camaraderie of the volunteers. My father would have been proud. A quiet smile played on my lips as I reflected on the journey. They had underestimated me and tried to break my spirit, but in their attempts, they had only become a minor detail in my larger story of resilience and growth. The garden wasn't just a tribute to my father, it was a testament to enduring, flourishing against the odds, and the power of community.